and that the customer is a king as long as he's willing to pay to be a king.
Today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Lorenzo Stoll. He is CEO of Swiss International Airlines of Western Switzerland. Mr. Lorenzo Stoll, welcome.
Hello.
Great. So tell us what you think is good leadership.
Good leadership, in my very personal opinion, is a leadership that gives sense and inspire people to achieve something. It's about giving your teams a vision that they can share and which they can recognize the value they have in achieving that vision. This is, in my sense, what leadership is about.
And what personal trait do you have as a leader that has helped you be successful?
I think the biggest trait I have is I'm passionate about what I do, and I have the ability to share my passion with the people I have to or I wish to work with, and balancing the passion with a very strong rational background that is business reality, a strong business acumen and a strong passion for what I do.
You mentioned that you did the Hotel School of Lausanne. How has that helped you in the current business you're doing?
It helped me because airlining is a form of hospitality business. We have the privilege here in Geneva to welcome about 5,000 guests per day on board, and we're little flying hoteliers. So the Ecole Hôtelière de Lausanne has taught me that the customer is at the core of everything we do. You need to be customer-centric, and that the customer is a king as long as he's willing to pay to be a king. There's no point of giving any customer services, recognition, or amenities if he sees no value to it. I think this is the two fundamentals Ecole Hôtelière de Lausanne has taught me.
Very interesting. And tell us, what is Swiss International's strategy today, and what are some of the constraints? For example, now we just had all these difficulties and attacks. What security constraints do you have?
So if you allow me, maybe let me do a few things around before of the security constraints. I'd like to address the current general constraints an airline like Swiss International Airline is exposed to. Currently, we are under massive pressure of the low-cost carriers here in Europe, and we are under strong pressure of the rising mega carriers out of the Gulf or out of Asia. To address that, we have developed a strategy to scale up our services and our quality on the long haul, while trying to beat or at least align to the low-cost carriers here in Europe with a very aggressive pricing strategy, while not having not left back anything on services and on value we offer to our customers. To answer your questions about the security constraints, I don't perceive security as a constraint. Security is part of our daily business. It's part of the quality promise we give to our passengers that we will take care of their security and of their safety while they are on board our aircraft. The current situation has raised security concerns. We've sharpened up our security approach, but we don't see it as a constraint. We see it as a necessary service we render to our passengers.
And indeed, a good service to have.
Indeed.
So what routine do you have every morning, let's say, that has helped you in your work and reaching your goals?
The first thing I do in the morning, first thing, I'm an early bird. So I like to get up early in the morning. It's 5:30-ish, 6-ish in the morning. And the first thing I do is I get a black, dark espresso, really Italian espresso. That's my morning routine. Then comes the shower and this kind of things. And when I arrive in the office, the first thing I do is I look at what does my day look like, what do I need to achieve during the day, as well as the next 7 days, as well as the next month. And this is a rolling process, so every day I increment by 1 day, so I have more or less in mind what is coming up for the next 30 days. This is what I do in the morning.
So good. You have a short, medium, and long-term vision.
Exactly.
Great. And so if you had to give advice to yourself as a young leader, what advice would you give?
I think I learned from my biggest failure, which was, at that time I was working for Nestlé, and we were in a very difficult and tense negotiation with one of our big customers, and I wanted to conclude the negotiation as fast as possible. And I lost the vision of the whole. And also I did not identify maybe some of the traps that were on my path to concluding that negotiation. So I failed. And we closed the deal, but at a much more expensive rate that we would have wanted. And what I learned from that, and what I still use, is not to be too impatient. Success is a story that builds over time. And don't forget sight of everything that goes around your core or your key target or your key objective. There's a few other things swimming around that you want to keep in sight.
And what are you most passionate about today that you could share with us?
I think what I'm most passionate about is building the success of Swiss in Western Switzerland and Western Europe on the medium term, and the role we play within the group to be the innovation lab for the airline industry or the airline here in Switzerland. So I'm passionate about having the ability to try a lot of different things, a lot of different concepts that might match better to the needs of our passengers today. And the most fascinating thing about the whole thing is to have to work with people that make up the teams of the company. I think this is the biggest privilege you can have as a leader, is to have people to work with.
Wonderful. Thank you. And give us a last tip of how to book your flight on Swiss.
Booking flights on Swiss is very easy. Check out Swiss.com for all our flights, specifically out of Geneva. Please check Swiss.com/Geneva. And if you want to have good deals, subscribe to our newsletter or book to fly on a Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll, for sharing your experience and your know-how with us.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the MKB Leadership Show. I'm your host, Katrina Burrus, and stay tuned for future episodes. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.